Good morning, tax class. Today we want to look at moving expenses, and I want to briefly just show you a moving expense form 3903. Let's go to your Wolf Den class. Okay, under test 3 material. Okay, I've posted some updated PowerPoints with just a few minor changes. One is to the last problem, and one was on the travel expense amount. And then I've also just given you the form 3903. The prior problems were already in the PowerPoint, so I didn't see a need for you to have to print those out. So let's go to your PowerPoints very briefly. This is just a small section in this chapter 4, and I thought that it was necessary because moving expenses, that's a big issue as far as travel, and people do want to know how much they can deduct when they're having to move and change jobs. So I wanted to go through this, and let's just take a look at these PowerPoints. Okay, what you can deduct would be mileage. Okay, you can deduct hotel rooms. Virtually the only thing you can't deduct when you're looking at travel expenses are meals. Okay, so in these problems, when we go through there, you have to pull out meals. You cannot deduct those on your taxes. If you have been reimbursed by your employer, you cannot take both the deduction on your taxes and keep the reimbursement. You have to offset that. So you have to show that reimbursement, and anything over that you can deduct. So that's what we want to look at on this form. Now, what changed from the 2014 mileage rate was that it was 23.5 cents. So that was the only thing that changed. Now, there's a distance test that you have to meet. Okay. If you change jobs, the distance from your house to your new job, okay, has to be greater than the prior distance that you had traveled, at least 50 miles more. Okay, so it has to be at least 50 miles more. You cannot deduct travel expenses if you're getting closer to town. An example might be, I'm currently commuting to Newberry, but if I had lived in Newberry and I was coming back to Lander, okay, that would not qualify because my residence is here in Greenwood. In other words, if I had bought a house in Newberry, that commuting would not have qualified. Not sure if that makes sense, but we'll get to one of the problems. Also, you have to have worked 39 weeks during that 12-month period for it to count after your move. So maybe this will help if we're looking at the problem. Let's take a look at the first one. Daniel is in San Diego and he lives in Del Mar. Okay, so there's a distance of 20 miles from his home to where he works. Now he accepts a new position, and this time the position is going to be 110 miles from his home. Okay, now here's the rule. There has to be at least 50 miles distance from his old place of work to his new place of work, okay? And that's what would qualify here. So they're asking you here what distance is going to qualify. Okay, the distance is going to be 110 minus 20. So from his old place of work to the new place of work has to be greater than 50 miles for him to be able to deduct any moving expenses. Okay, does he qualify? The answer is yes, because the distance meets the distance test. Now go back and let's look at the distance test. The distance from his residence to his new job location has to be at least 50 miles more than the distance from his former residence to his former job location. Okay, so that is true. Okay, there is a greater distance here. Okay, it was 20, now it's 110, so it does qualify there. How much can he deduct there? Okay, the distance that qualifies is 90. Okay, so the the new distance minus the old distance is 90, and that qualifies, okay, the 50-mile distance test. So he does qualify for moving expenses. Okay. Now, second question is, how much would this individual get as far as being able to deduct his moving expenses? And it doesn't say anything about being reimbursed here. So let's take a look at this. Moving furniture, yes, that's going to count. Transportation, $500. Now, keep in mind, if we had mileage, we would have to multiply it times 23 cents. Okay, but the $500 on transportation qualifies. Meals do not qualify. Meals do not qualify. Lodging, hotel room, yes, it qualifies. So as far as the dollar amount here, $3,600, $500 on transportation, and then lodging. So he can deduct, using this form 3903 that we're going to look at, $4,500 if he's not reimbursed. Okay. Now, if his employer gives him any reimbursement, that has to be deducted out. Okay. So do keep in mind, meals do not qualify. Now, the last example I want to look at would be using this form. This is a similar example to the one we just looked at, although the employer is reimbursed $5,000. So I want you to go, let me go to the back up here. Let's go to Wolf Den, and you need to pull up the form. Okay, here it is. Moving expense form 3903 to do this problem, and I will work it out for you. Okay. So 3903 is the form you need to pull out. Now let's go back to the PowerPoints, go back to the problem, and let's take a look at it. Okay. Now I had to update this for names, and there was the difference in mileage. Right here, the mileage rate is now just 23 cents. It was 23.5 cents. So it made a difference. The reimbursement amount, if you've already looked at this, in this new problem, it's only $5,000. The mileage amount was a little bit less. I had to change the name. So there's some differences here if you've already looked at this problem. Okay, during May 2015, Maureen is transferred to a new job by her employer. It requires her to move from Phoenix to New York. Now, obviously, we know that that would qualify. She incurs packing and moving expenses of $4,100, lodging of $650. She spends $200 on meals. The mileage rate's 23 cents for her 2,687 miles, and she's reimbursed $5,000. Now, let's come down here to the form, and let's take a look. The one I printed out, I scanned, was a little bit crooked, but you'll just have to forgive me for that. I couldn't get it to go back through. Okay, first thing, let's put her name down. Maureen Montsinger. Don't know her social, so just make up something. Maybe all nines. Just put something in there. Okay. The distance test that does meet, we can tell by looking. However, they do give you instructions about that. Now let's read through this form. The first line says transportation and storage of household goods, personal effects. Okay, and then the second line said travel, including lodging. Okay, do not include the cost of meals. So they tell you this. Now let's go back to the information. Under line 1, it says packing and moving expenses, if you go back to your problem, would be $4,100. So that's what's going to go in line 1. So put $4,100 in line 1 with no cents. Okay, second line would be travel and lodging. So go back to the PowerPoint. The cost of her lodging during the move is $650. So we know we want to include that. And also her mileage now, this is where we have to calculate mileage. The other problem that was given is 2,687 miles at 23 cents per mile. Okay, so just down here at the bottom, let's do some calculation. 2,687 times 0.23. If you run that in your calculator, that's $618 and some cents, just round it up. Okay, and then lodging is going to be $650. Okay, so the total on this line, $1,268. Okay, meals do not qualify, so go up here and put that in under line 2. Okay. Line 3 says add these two numbers. 5,368. Okay. Line 4 says enter the total amount the employer paid you. Now if you go back to the problem, it says right here she was reimbursed $5,000. So you have to put that in line 4. And you may say, well, some people probably don't do that. They just keep it. Well, I'm sure the employer has to turn that in too, and there's some checks. That's what the auditors are doing there. So employer is going to show this on his tax return as a deduction. Okay, so you have to show it basically as income. It's got to offset what your expenses were. So this is regarded as income here. Now, you can put parentheses, but it says here on line 4, okay, what we're going to do is, it says, is line 3 more than line 4? If your expenses are greater than what you were reimbursed, okay, then yes. And what that means is you can deduct the difference. And the difference between those two numbers is $368. So this is your deduction. However, if you receive more than what your expenses are, okay, you're going to have to put down no, and you can't deduct your expenses. And the result is you're going to have to report that extra on line 7 as income. Okay, it's going to become part of your income. So here, this amount will go to line 26 if you want to go and look at that. I didn't pull it up, but you'll show this deduction on line 26 on the 1040 form. Okay, and I really should have pulled it up, but you can do that. Go to the 1040, take a look at where that would be reported. Otherwise, if you had received more income here, if this were greater than line 3, you're going to have to show that basically as income on line 7 of your 1040. Okay, so this was a real short class. Just want you to know how to do one of these moving expense forms. There's no homework. I didn't give you an extra problem to do or anything. There will be a quiz on this material as well as on the other material. Let's go back to Wolf Den. Okay, so you need to go back and you need to review rental income. Okay, we looked at rental income, chapter 4, part 1. We looked at IRAs last week. You had homework on all that. We had some reading there on the IRAs, saving for retirement. You need to look at that. You also need to look at the moving expenses. So everything that's currently under test 3 material, you need to review for a quiz on Friday. Okay, and my husband will come and give you that quiz. It'll be a 10 multiple choice quiz like we've normally done for our homework grade. Okay, have a good day. If you have any questions, please email me or text me.